The cabin lights of Flight 217 from New York to London dimmed softly as the Airbus A380 cruised at 39,000 feet.
You are
the faint hum of
trespassing.
engines
Get off this
blending with
plane
the
right
clink of
now.
champagne flutes in
I
first
want
class.
him removed from this flight
Passengers
immediately.
recline in their private suites, silk-eye masks slipping over Botox-smooth foreheads, while a quiet symphony of privilege played out. A tech mogul tapping furiously on his laptop, a minor European royal scrolling through Instagram, and a hedge fund heiress sipping Dom Perignon like it was tap water. At the front of the section, in seat 1A, sat a man who looked utterly out of place. His clothes were clean but worn, a faded navy blazer with frayed cuffs, a plain white shirt that had been washed one too many times, khaki trousers that sagged slightly at the knees, and scuffed brown leather shoes that hadn't seen polish in years. A simple canvas backpack rested at his feet, the kind college students carry. No Rolex glinting on his wrist, no Hermes belt, no AirPods Pro dangling from his ears. He could have been a tired professor, or perhaps someone who'd scraped together miles for an upgrade he barely understood. The flight attendant, Chloe, a polished brunette with a smile trained to perfection, noted him immediately when she'd scanned boarding passes. Her eyes had lingered a fraction too long on his attire, the subtle flicker of confusion quickly masked. But now, 30 minutes into flight, the real judgment began. Across the aisle in 1C sat Vanessa Harrington, an influencer with 2.7 million followers and a reputation for unfiltered, real-talk videos. She was live-streaming to her audience, angled so the camera caught the luxurious pod behind her. Mid-sentence about the caviar service, her gaze drifted to the man in 1A. She paused, smirked, and turned the phone slightly. "Okay, loves," she whispered conspiratorially into the mic. "Tell me I'm not the only one seeing this. How did he even get up here? Did economy run out of seats or something?" Her chat exploded with laughing emojis and comments. "LMAO, he looks homeless." "Security. First class is ruined now." The man didn't react. He was reading an old paperback novel, dog-eared and yellowed, completely absorbed. But the damage was done. Vanessa's stream had already hit 40,000 viewers. A man in a tailored Tom Ford suit, Gregory Langford, a private equity partner who prided himself on never flying anything less than suite class, leaned forward from 2A. He'd overheard Vanessa and now fixed the stranger with a cold stare. "Excuse me," Gregory said loudly enough for half the cabin to hear, beckoning Chloe over. "Is there some kind of mistake? This gentleman doesn't appear to belong in first class." Chloe froze mid-stride, crystal glass balanced on her tray. She glanced nervously at the man in 1A, who finally looked up from his book, calm brown eyes meeting commotion without a trace of alarm. "Sir," Chloe began carefully, addressing Gregory, "all passengers are verified at boarding." "I don't care about boarding," Gregory interrupted, voice rising. "Look at him. He looks like he wandered in off the street. We pay tens of thousands for these seats to avoid this." He gestured dismissively. Vanessa angled her phone again, narrating in a stage whisper. "Y'all, this is wild. They're about to kick him out. Stay tuned." A ripple of murmur spread. The royal lowered her I-master watch. The tech mogul paused his work. Even the usually unflappable cabin crew exchanged glances. Chloe approached a man in 1A, her professional smile strained. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass again, please?" He closed his book gently, slipped a worn leather bookmark between the pages, and reached into his blazer's inner pocket. He handed her the crumpled stub without a word. Chloe scanned it with her tablet, her brow furrowed. "It says 1A, Mr. Hawthorne. Everything checks out." "Hawthorne," Gregory scoffed. "Never heard of him. Probably used points or some glitch. I'm calling the purser." Within minutes, the purser, a stern woman named Margaret with 28 years of service, arrived. Gregory launched into a full complaint, supported by Vanessa's live commentary and several nodding passengers who suddenly felt their luxury was under siege. Margaret reviewed the manifest again, then turned to the man. "Sir, there seems to be some concern from other guests. For the comfort of all passengers, perhaps you'd be more comfortable in business class? We can move you immediately." The man, Alexander Hawthorne, tilted his head slightly, as if considering a mildly interesting proposition. He looked around the cabin slowly, taking the faces turned toward him. Curiosity, disdain, amusement. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and steady, carrying an accent that was hard to place, mid-Atlantic, cultured, but with something unpretentious beneath it. "No, thank you," he said politely. "I'm quite comfortable here." Margaret's lips tightened. "Sir, I'm afraid I must insist. We have a duty to ensure all guests feel at ease." Alexander smiled faintly. "And I'm a guest too, am I not?" Gregory stood up now, phone already to his ear. "I'm calling corporate. This is unacceptable. I know the regional VP personally." Vanessa zoomed in on Alexander's face. "He's refusing to leave, you guys. The audacity." Margaret leaned closer to Alexander, lowering her voice. "Sir, if you don't relocate voluntarily, we'll have to involve the captain, and upon landing, authorities may be notified for causing a disturbance." Alexander closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling softly. Then he reached into his canvas backpack and pulled out an older model iPhone. No case, screen cracked in one corner. He dialed a number from memory. The cabin watched in confused silence as he waited for the call to connect. "Good evening," he said into the phone. "This is Alexander Hawthorne. Patch me through to Captain Reynolds on flight 217, please." A pause. Gregory laughed out loud. "Oh, this is Rich." He's pretending to know the captain. But Margaret's face changed. She'd heard the name Hawthorne before, whispered in senior crew briefings, in executive memos. A name never to be taken lightly. On the other end of the line, a voice answered crisply. Alexander listened, then spoke again. "Captain, I'm in seat 1A. There seems to be a situation. Could you come to the cabin when convenient?" He ended the call. Less than 2 minutes later, the cockpit door opened. Captain Reynolds, a decorated pilot with silver hair and 35 years at the airline, emerged in full uniform. He scanned the cabin, nodded politely to the purser, and walked straight to Alexander. "Mr. Hawthorne," the captain said with unmistakable deference, offering his hand. "I apologize for the delay in greeting you personally. We had a minor routing adjustment." Alexander stood and shook the captain's hand. "No trouble at all, David, though I believe some passengers have concerns about my appearance." The cabin had gone deathly quiet. Vanessa's live stream chat was scrolling so fast it was a blur. Captain Reynolds turned to Margaret and Chloe. "Is there a problem?" Margaret stammered. "Some guests felt the gentleman didn't belong in first class, sir." The captain's expression hardened. He faced the cabin directly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced clearly, "allow me to introduce Mr. Alexander Hawthorne, the founder and majority owner of Aurora Global Airlines. This is his airline. These are his aircraft, and he may sit wherever he chooses." A collective intake of breath. Vanessa's phone nearly slipped from her hand. Gregory's face drained of color. The Royal quickly pulled her mask back down. Alexander looked at Captain Reynolds with quiet amusement. "Thank you, David. Though perhaps we should clarify one more thing." He turned to the stunned cabin, his voice calm but carrying effortlessly to every seat. "I often fly like this, undercover, if you will. No entourage, no fanfare. I like to see how my teams treat passengers when they think no one important is watching. Tonight, I've seen quite a lot." He paused, letting the word settle. "Ms. Harrington," he said, nodding toward Vanessa, who looked like she might faint. "Your content is memorable. Mr. Langford, I believe you mentioned knowing our regional VP? I'll make sure he returns your call." Then to the crew, "Margaret, Chloe, outstanding service as always. No reflection on you." He sat back down, opened his paperback again, and resumed reading as if nothing had happened. The cabin remained frozen for a long moment. Then, one by one, passengers averted their eyes, suddenly fascinated by their menus or the night sky beyond the windows. Vanessa ended her live stream abruptly. Gregory sank into his seat, face buried in his hands. And somewhere over the Atlantic, the billionaire CEO of the world's most luxurious airline turned another page in his worn novel, quietly observing the rest of the flight unfold. The silence that followed Captain Reynolds' announcement stretched like a taut wire, humming with unspoken regret. No one dared to speak. Even the software, the air conditioning, seemed amplified. Alexander Hawthorne returned to his book, turning a page with deliberate calm, but his eyes no longer scanned the lines. Instead, they flicked subtly across the cabin, cataloging every micro-expression. The way Gregory Langford's manicured fingers trembled as he gripped his armrest, the flush creeping up Vanessa Harrington's neck as she stared at her blank phone screen, the minor royal pretending to sleep while her chest rose and fell too quickly. Chloe and Margaret retreated to the galley, whispering urgently. Margaret's voice carried the faintest edge of panic. I had no idea. The manifest just says Hawthorne, A. In 1A, no special notation, no VIP flag. He always books like this. Chloe nodded, wide-eyed. He does it on random flights every few months. They call them ghost rides and crew chat. No one ever knows which one he'll pick. Back in the cabin, the first to break the spell was Gregory. He cleared his throat, unbuckled his seatbelt, and approached Alexander's seat with the cautious gait of a man walking across thin ice. Mr. Hawthorne, he began, voice pitched lower than before, I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I apologize unreservedly. My concern was only for the comfort of all passengers. I had no intention of causing offense. Alexander lowered his book and regarded Gregory with mild curiosity, as though observing an unfamiliar species. Misunderstanding, he repeated softly. Interesting choice of word. Tell me, Mr. Langford, what exactly did you misunderstand about my appearance that led you to conclude I didn't belong? Gregory opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Well, standards, sir. First class has certain expectations. Expectations, Alexander echoed. Expectations set by whom? By the airline? Or by passengers who believe money buys the right to police other people's clothing? Gregory's face reddened further. Behind him, Vanessa watched the exchange with the frozen fascination of someone realizing their career might be combusting in real time. Alexander continued, voice still quiet, but carrying effortlessly. Aurora Global was founded on a simple principle. Luxury should be defined by service, not by how expensive someone's watch is. I built this airline for travelers of every background, those who save for years for one special trip, those who fly weekly for work, those who simply love the sky. The moment we start judging worthiness by outward appearance, we betray that principle. He paused, letting the words settle. But principles are easy proclaimed in boardrooms. The real test is how our teams and our passengers behave when they think no one's watching. Gregory swallowed hard. Again, my deepest apologies. If there's anything I can do, there is, Alexander interrupted gently. You can sit down and enjoy the flight, and reflect on why you felt entitled to speak for all passengers when no one else had complained. Gregory retreated, deflated. Vanessa, sensing the shifting tide, slipped her phone beneath her blanket, but Alexander's gaze found her next. Ms. Harrington, he said, tone almost conversational. You have quite a following, I understand. 2.7 million people who trust your judgment. Vanessa managed a weak smile. 2.8 now, actually. Alexander's lips twitched. Congratulations. Influence is a powerful thing. Tonight you used it to mock a stranger based solely on his clothes. How many of your followers do you think took that as permission to do the same in their daily lives? Vanessa's bravado crumbled. I thought it was just banter. Light-hearted content. Content, Alexander mused. A word that seems to absolve everything these days. Tell me, if I'd truly been someone who'd saved for years to sit here, perhaps a teacher treating himself after decades of service, would your content have felt light-hearted to him? She had no answer. Tears welled unexpectedly, smudging her perfect eyeliner. Alexander softened slightly. I'm not here to ruin careers, Ms. Harrington, but actions have consequences. When we land, you'll find an email from my office. We're launching a campaign next year called Real Luxury, stories of ordinary people experiencing extraordinary service. I'd like you to participate, not as punishment, but as education. Spend a month flying economy on various airlines, documenting the real passenger experience without filters or sponsors. if you're willing. Vanessa blinked, stunned. You're offering me a collaboration? A chance to grow, he corrected. Whether you take it is up to you. She nodded mutely, the enormity of the moment sinking in. The rest of the flight passed in a strange, charged atmosphere. Service resumed, but with an almost reverent quality. Chloe brought Alexander a fresh cup of tea without being asked, her hands trembling slightly as she poured. Other passengers kept their voices low, their glances frequent but discreet. Mid-flight, the cabin lights dimmed further for the overnight portion. Most passengers reclined their seats into beds, drawing privacy doors. Alexander, however, remained upright, reading by the soft glow of his individual light. A small figure appeared beside his seat, an 8-year-old girl from business class, wearing unicorn pajamas, clutching a stuffed elephant. Her mother hovered anxiously a few steps behind. "Excuse me," the girl whispered. "Are you really the boss of the whole airplane?" Alexander closed his book and smiled, the first genuine, warm smile of the flight. "I suppose I am. What's your name?" "Lily," she said. "Mommy said you got in trouble for your clothes. But I think your jacket is cool. It looks like an explorer's." Her mother gasped softly. "Lily, I'm so sorry, Mr. Hawthorne." He waved her off gently. "No apology needed. Lily, you're absolutely right. This jacket has been to 43 countries. It's seen more than most people in this cabin combined." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Will you tell me about one?" Alexander glanced at the mother, who nodded gratefully, then patted the empty seat beside him. The pod was large enough. Lily climbed up eagerly, elephant tucked under her arm. For the next hour, as the rest of first class pretended to sleep, Alexander Hawthorne told an 8-year-old girl about climbing volcanoes in Iceland, watching sea turtles hatch in Costa Rica, and getting lost in the Medina of Marrakesh. His voice was low, animated, full of wonder. Lily listened rapt, asking endless questions. When she finally grew sleepy, her mother came to collect her. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "She'll remember this forever." As they left, Alexander caught sight of Vanessa watching from across the aisle. Her privacy door cracked open. Their eyes met. She gave a small, tentative thumbs up. He nodded once. Dawn approached over the Atlantic, painting the sky in delicate pinks and golds visible through the windows. Breakfast service began. Fresh croissants, eggs Benedict, smoked salmon. The mood had shifted imperceptibly. Conversations were quieter, kinder. Gregory helped an elderly passenger with her tray table without being asked. The tech mogul offered his spare noise-canceling headphones to a young man whose had broken. Captain Reynolds made another announcement as they began descent into Heathrow. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire crew, thank you for flying Aurora Global. We hope you've had a memorable journey. And remember, true luxury isn't about what you wear. It's about how you treat the people around you." The applause that followed was spontaneous, heartfelt. As the wheels touched down with gentle thud, Alexander gathered his canvas backpack and worn novel. Passengers waited patiently as he stood first. No one dared rush past. One by one, they offered quiet words as he passed. "Safe travels, sir." "Thank you." "Inspiring." Vanessa lingered at the door. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'll do the campaign. And I'm deleting tonight's stream." He studied her for a moment. "Good. Start fresh. We all get second chances." Gregory was last. He extended his hand formally. "Sir, I've already emailed my resignation to your regional VP, effective immediately. I clearly have much to learn about leadership." Alexander shook his head. "Keep your job, Mr. Langford, but spend the next year mentoring young analysts from underrepresented backgrounds. Show them that success isn't about Tom Ford suits." Gregory's eyes glistened. "I will." At customs, Alexander bypassed the premium lanes entirely, joining the regular queue with his old backpack slung over one shoulder. A few passengers from the flight spotted him and smiled knowingly, but said nothing. Outside in the arrivals hall, instead of the usual fleet of black town cars awaiting first-class passengers, a single London taxi idled at the curb. The driver, an older man with a salt and pepper beard, leapt out when he saw Alexander. "Morning, boss," he said with a grin. "Regular route today?" Alexander chuckled. "Regular route, Tom. How are the grandkids?" As they pulled away from Heathrow, the taxi merged into the gray English morning traffic. Behind them, Vanessa posted her first news story in hours, a simple black screen with white text. "Learning what real luxury means today. More soon." Gregory sat in the back of his hired Mercedes, drafting an email to HR about a new mentorship program. And somewhere in the queue for coffee at Terminal 5, Lily told her mother for the 10th time about the man who owned the airplane but wore an explorer's jacket. Alexander Hawthorne watched London unfold through the taxi window, red buses, Georgian townhouses, the Thames glinting in weak winter sun, and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Another ghost ride complete. The airline was in good hands, but more importantly, a few hearts had shifted, however slightly. The taxi turned onto a quiet street in Kensington, pulling up outside a modest terrace house that could have belonged to any middle-class family. No gates, no security, just a small garden with rose bushes dormant for winter. Tom popped the boot. "Shall I wait?" "No need," Alexander said, handing him a generous tip. "Day off with pay. Go see those grandkids." As the taxi pulled away, Alexander climbed the steps, keys jingling. Inside, the house was warm and lived in. Books stacked everywhere, framed photos of far-flung places, a well-worn armchair by the fireplace. He hung his frayed blazer on a hook by the door, right next to a tailored overcoat he rarely wore, and headed to the kitchen to make tea. Upstairs, in a small office overlooking the garden, his laptop waited. Emails from the board about quarterly projections, acquisition offers, expansion plans into Asia. All of it could wait another hour, because tomorrow or perhaps next week, he'd book another random ticket. Maybe economy this time, under a different name, wearing different old clothes. The work of keeping an airline humane was never done, and somewhere across the city, passengers from Flight 217 were beginning their days change in ways they couldn't yet articulate, carrying with them the quiet lesson that the man in the worn jacket might just be the most powerful person in the room. Months turned into years, and the legend of Flight 217 grew quietly, like ripples spreading across a vast ocean. It never exploded into tabloid headlines. Alexander Hawthorne had no interest in fame, but within the tight-knit world of aviation, among crew members who whispered in galleys and pilots who shared stories over coffee in crew lounges, it became known simply as the ghost ride that changed everything. Vanessa Harrington kept her promise. She deleted the infamous stream and, for the first time in her career, went silent online for 30 days. When she returned, her feed was transformed. No more sponsor hauls or filter perfection. Instead, she documented her month-flying economy. Cramped middle seats on red ice, kindness from strangers sharing armrests, flight attendants going above and beyond for passengers who could never afford a tip. The Real Luxury series, co-produced with Aurora Global, became her most viewed content ever. Not because it was glamorous, but because it was human. Brands dropped her at first, then scrambled to come back when authenticity became the new currency. Today, she sits on the board of a nonprofit that funds dream trips for families who've never left their hometowns. And every year on the anniversary of that flight, she posts the same simple message: never judge the book by its cover. Some stories are written in faded ink. Gregory Langford did more than mentor analysts. He sold his Tom Ford suits, donated the proceeds, and founded an initiative within his firm that scouts talent from community colleges and trade schools. The first cohort produced 3 partners in 5 years. Young people who once thought private equity was a world closed to them. Gregory still flies first class, but now he's the one who notices when someone looks uncomfortable or out of place, quietly switching seats or offering his amenities kit. He and Alexander exchange Christmas cards every year, brief notes that say more in few words than most people manage in speeches. Lily, the little girl with the stuffed elephant, grew up cherishing the memory. She kept a journal of every flight she ever took, sketching clouds and writing down acts of kindness she witnessed at 30,000 feet. At 16, she won a national essay contest with a piece titled The Explorer's Jacket, recounting that night over the Atlantic. The prize was a scholarship to study aerospace engineering. Now, in her final year at university, she interns at Aurora Global's Innovation Lab, designing more inclusive cabin features, wider seats for larger bodies, better lighting for neurodiverse passengers, quiet zones for those overwhelmed by travel. When she walks the hangars, older engineers smile and call her the kid who met the boss in unicorn pajamas. As for Aurora Global Airlines, it soared higher than any analyst had predicted, not because of flashy marketing or celebrity partnerships, but because something intangible shifted. Crew training expanded to include modules on unconscious bias and radical empathy. Ghost rides became official, though still unannounced. Senior executives required to fly incognito twice a year, reporting back on the real passenger experience. Service scores climbed steadily. Word spread among travelers. If you fly Aurora, you're treated like a person, not a wallet. Economy passengers received the same genuine smiles as sweet guests. Children got wings pins without having to ask. Lost luggage found its way home faster than ever. Alexander Hawthorne never changed his habits. He still lived in a modest Kensington house, still wore the same frayed blazer on his undercover flights, still read dog-eared paperbacks while the world rushed around him. But the world noticed him now in subtler ways. Strangers on trains would sometimes nod in recognition, having seen his quiet face in a documentary Vanessa produced years later, a film that won awards not for drama, but for truth. Young entrepreneurs wrote to him, inspired by the billionaire who measured wealth in decency rather than dollars. He answered every letter personally, signing them simply, A. Hawthorne, fellow traveler. One crisp December morning, exactly 5 years after Flight 217, Alexander booked another ticket. This time, economy on a short-hop flight from London to Edinburgh. He wore an even older jacket now, patches on the elbows, and carried the same canvas backpack. As he settled into his middle seat between a nervous first-time flyer and an exhausted nurse returning from a night shift, he smiled to himself. The nurse glanced at him, then at his book, an ancient copy of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's Wind, Sand, and Stars. "Good choice," she said softly. "About flying, isn't it?" "The best kind," he replied. "About seeing people clearly." She nodded, pulling out her own book. No one around them had any idea who he was. No one judged his clothes. The flight attendant greeted every row with the same warmth. A child across the aisle waved shyly, and Alexander waved back. High above the Scottish hills, as golden winter light flooded the cabin, Alexander closed his eyes for a moment and listened, to the hum of engines he'd helped design, to conversations gentle and unhurried, to the quiet heartbeat of an airline that had learned, through one extraordinary night, what luxury truly means. It isn't the champagne or the lie-flat beds. It isn't the price of the ticket or the label on your jacket. True luxury is the rare and precious moment when strangers treat one another with kindness, assuming the best instead of the worst, seeing the hidden worth in every soul they encounter. And somewhere on every Aurora flight that day, and every day after, passengers felt it, a subtle magic in the air, a gentle reminder that the person next to you might just be carrying an entire universe inside a worn-out coat. Alexander Hawthorne never sought a monument or a legacy carved in stone. But if you fly as Airline today, you'll feel it all the same, in the smile of the crew, in the space given to weary travelers, in the quiet knowledge that you belong exactly as you are. Because once, on a night flight over the Atlantic, a man in old clothes taught the sky a lesson it never forgot. We are all, in the end, just fellow explorers, wearing whatever jackets life has handed us, journeying together through the vast and beautiful dark, searching for light in one another's eyes. And that, dear listener, is the most magnificent story of all.